Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Today we have brought to you lesson 3 on Kotlin programming. In today's session, we are going to discuss about Kotlin cones, loops, type checking, ranges in loops, and when statements. So let's get started with our program. In order to get started, you are going to cover the following topics. We'll be covering Kotlin cones. Then we'll switch to the next module, which is Kotlin loops and functions. We are going to perform type checking on Kotlin. We are going to look into ranges within, and you're going to understand about loop creation. So we guys are going to do the following stuff in today's program, as well as we are going to implement the when statements also. So let's get started with the code. So first of all, I would like to let you all know what is Kotlin cones. So Kotlin cones is a series of exercises to get familiar with Kotlin. Kotlin cones are a series of exercises to get you familiar with the Kotlin syntax. Each exercise is created as a failing unit test, and your job is to make it pass. You can work with Kotlin cones in two ways. The first one is you can play your Kotlin code in a Kotlin online interface, which we have already experienced in lesson 1, which is available at play.kotlinlanguage.org/cone/overview. You can quickly click on start now and you can get access to the exercises, and you can implement these exercises and pass the tests. So here there's an option to get started with online. Moreover, there is a second way to start. You can use IntelliJ IDEA, and under the course plugin, under the EduTools plugin, we have got Kotlin cones course. We can choose that and we can start with testing. So we are going to test both ways so that it is comfortable for both type of people, those who are taking the course on online playground, as well as those who are using IntelliJ IDEA. So let's get started with this. Initially, to get started with the code, I would like to quickly take you to Kotlin cones. I'm going to open a new page for you, and let's open Kotlin cones here. So when we start Kotlin's cones, initially what you're going to do, you're going to get access to the cookies. If you want, you can quickly press yes and you can continue that if you agree. So you can define Y and you can agree the cookies part. Then at the top left section, you all can quickly see there's a progress bar here, which is 0%. So now we have to start with the Kotlin program, and you can quickly click here on start now. So we can click here on start now and we will start with the Kotlin's program. So the first test or the first exercise we have got here is Helloworld Exercise. You can quickly get the code section here. This section, which is marked in blue color, has to be updated. You have to write the appropriate code which can pass the test cases. Now, you can quickly take a help of what has to be written here from the rightmost section. So now here in this first exercise, just to tell you, there are totally 43 exercises which you all have to go through. The first exercise is a simple functions exercise. You can take a look at function syntax and make the function start, return the string OK. So we have already written various functions earlier, and we know how we can return a response. We have done that in the previous session also. So we are going to update this code so that this function returns an OK response. So you can quickly take the help here. In the task, the function to do is used that throws an exception. Your job during the cones will be to replace this function invocation with a meaningful code according to the problem. Okay. So now what you can do is, if we don't change the code as of now, and if we run it, you can see that at the very bottom, you're going to get a operation like a problem statement that an error has been occurred and the operation is not yet implemented. So now we are going to modify the code. So just to modify the code, I would like to quickly give you an introduction. This is the function keyword. We have defined a start function. The start function doesn't have a body and it returns a string type. Okay. So to return a string type, we can quickly specify an output OK, which can be returned. So you can define it somewhat like this. Okay. So now what is going to happen? You have written a function fun with a start without a body. So you can quickly use OK and you can define the body. Or else in other way, you guys could have also done it like this. You could have written a return statement. You can define a return statement and you could have returned an OK, which is the general policy of the code. But here we have to actually implement it in a way which is required here. So here is the function string and we can quickly define. So we are going to return an OK response and now we are going to quickly test this. So once we test this function, now you can see that this function is passed. So we are done with the first test and we have got 3% progress into this. So all the participants, those who will be coding along with us, you guys have to go through with all these test cases, wherein the next will be named arguments, then the default arguments, lambdas, strings, data classes, nullable types, smart casting, extensions, object expressions. So all these things are a part of Kotlin programming. You guys need to be pretty comfortable with it. We will be covering all the topics as per course, and then you guys can come back to Kotlin Koans so as to test the exercises and to ensure that you guys are able to understand Kotlin programming well. Now, let's quickly go to the next Koan. The next Koan is a named argument Koan. Named arguments, you guys need to understand. So let's quickly see what named arguments are. First of all, I'm going to put that on second line so that you guys can see the to-do section. So here there's a function known as join options, within which we have an options which is of a collection type. Collection could be a list or it could be, it's generally a list, a collection of certain items. So here it is a collection of string items. Okay, you're going to read about collections in the upcoming videos so that you will understand about collections well. Now what we are going to do, suppose we have a list of collections and we want to perform some named arguments operations on it. So what is the requirement? Let's have a look. So named argument says default and named arguments help to minimize the number of overloads and improve the readability of the function invocation. The library function join to string is declared with the default values for parameters. So here are the default values. The function is already pre-initialized with certain options. So you can see that the join to string function which you are seeing here, the code body is defined here. Okay, so this join to string function is defined here. Now within this function, you all can quickly observe we have got a few parameters. The first parameter is a separator parameter, which is of string type, which stores a comma. Second is a prefix parameter, which does not have a value. Then we have a postfix parameter, which does not have a value again. You can quickly observe here. We don't have the values here. It's an empty string as of now. So we need to update these strings as per the requirement. Then finally, this function is going to return a string type. Okay. And we have to specify the parameters within this. Okay, so you have to take the references from these sections and you have to define this information here within the function. Now, what kind of information has to be defined? Let us just quickly check back. So in order to define this information, you can quickly see it says it can be called on a collection of strings specifying only 2 arguments, make the function J options, return the list in a JSON format. Okay, so you can see that it can be called on collection of strings. So join to string function will be called on strings. Now specifying only 2 arguments, make the function join options, return the list in a JSON format. So there are 2 options using which we can return a JSON format of the list. Now you guys may be wondering what is JSON. So JSON actually stands for JavaScript Object Notation. JavaScript Object Notation. And here the example format which is required is we need to get a list of strings in this format. Okay. So collections already have these names A, B, and C. Just to ensure the format, we need to define brackets to prefix the statement and postfix the statements. Now suppose there is a collection and that collection, this collection, suppose it already contains A, comma B, comma C. Okay, so there are three strings A, B, and C. Now they will be collected together, A, comma B, comma C. So just to ensure the format at the left bottom, we need to concatenate, or we need to prefix a bracket here, and then we need to postfix a bracket at the end. Okay, I'll just write that for you. You need to postfix this bracket, and you need to prefix this also in the string, and this is your collective string ABC. Okay, so how we are going to define this code? Let's have a look. So now with respect to the functions which we need to define here, let's just start. So first options which you are going to pass will be the prefix option. Now within this prefix, what you're going to do, you're going to give a single bracket separated by comma. You're going to give the postfix information. Now the postfix information is going to get another bracket, and this is the bracket which we need to concatenate. So join to string will concatenate both these elements to ABC, and we are going to get an appropriate format. Okay, so let's quickly run that. So when I run this, you can see that the test join to string has been passed. Now, as you guys can see, we have got these two tests passed. The named arguments have been done. So you need to understand, you need to do some more practice on the arguments part and the functions part, which we have already done. So you can refer to the references which I've already shared in the previous sessions. Now, next we'll quickly go to the default arguments, let's say. So here for the default arguments, we have another exercise. In the exercise number 3, let's say we have the default arguments wherein we need to update this line. This is the selected line where we need to write some code, and there are certain errors in the functions which you guys can observe. So let's read the problem statement and let's see how we are going to write the appropriate code and pass these test cases. So now here you can see that there are several overloads of foo function in Java. So here you have a piece of code which is written in Java. Now let's quickly go through with the code. So initially we have got a string foo, a function named as foo, which is going to return string, which is of string name type. Then we have a number, and then we have a Boolean. So it is going to return to uppercase, name to uppercase, and the name will be returned. Then there is a function string foo which receives string name and integer number, and it returns name, number, and false by default. Okay, so here you can see when we have passed only 2 strings, by default the false has been returned. Now there is another function string foo where string name to uppercase will be passed. So name will be returned, default 42 will be returned, and to uppercase whatever we have passed will be returned. Okay. And finally, we have a string name wherein the name will be returned and the number will be returned. So now you guys can quickly see that there are some default values which are being returned. The first default value, if you don't pass it in a function, in an argument, this false will be written. And in the other 2 cases, 42 will be written where the elements have not been passed. Okay. So now what you need to do, we need to quickly understand. These are known as overloading functions in Java programming, wherein we have a function with the same name but different number of arguments. So we can pass different number of arguments and get the code executed. So now we have to change the format of this so that all these functions which we are calling here can be executed. So let's have a look how we're going to do that. So to do this, we are going to have an update. Let's just hold on for a minute. We'll quickly check back. Let's say we are going to transmit. We are going to check this code and we are going to update that. So let's go for it. So first of all, what we need to do, let's say we have got a function FOO, wherein we have got a name string, which is being called in every function. As you all can see, we have got that in the first function name. We have got that in the second function. Again, the name has been taken. Then the third, the name has been taken. Fourth, name has been taken. And in all these 4 cases, A, B, C, and D, the name has been provided. So we can leave the name as of now But next, what next we have to do? The next we have a number with an integer value. So a number with an integer value, let's update this function here. So you have three variables, name, number, and two uppercase. Let's just update that. So we are going to write a function f00. We can quickly revert back and then we'll type that again. So you're going to update the number part and you're going to update the two uppercase part. Okay. So with respect to the number part, what we generally have, with respect to the number part, we are going to update number 42 here as a default value. And with respect to Boolean, you have to take a false. So you have to define the Boolean false as well here. So let's go for it. Write a function f00. Now, once you have written this function f00, you have to define certain values, like you have to define your question mark name string. Then you have the number which you have to define. Then you have the two uppercase which you need to define. So let's go for it. Function f00. You're going to define the first variable will be name, which will be of string type. Let's keep it as it is because in all the four functions we have got A, B, C, and D overloaded. The next we have got is a number. So number is going to be an integer type. And since in case number 3 and in case number 4, we have to return a 42 by default. So we are going to dedicate a value 42 to this code. Then finally, we have the false value, which has to be returned, which is of Boolean type. So let's quickly define it. To uppercase, which is Boolean in nature, and we're going to call it as false. So we have defined it as false as of now. So now you can see that we have got all the three parameters. We have got the number, we have got the two uppercase, and we have got the name by default. So in the first case, A will be given, 42 and other values will be printed. In this case, number will be given. In this case, uppercase true will be given. And in this case, all the three values will be executed. So let's quickly run this now. So now once we run this, you can see that we have got the test default and name parameters passed. So this is how, what we can do is we can quickly execute Kotlin Koans and you can pass certain test cases. So Kotlin Koans is a set of exercises which helps you test your Kotlin programming skills with respect to different topics. So as soon as we proceed with other different topics, we are going to perform the implementations of these, as well as you guys can also test your, learn your concepts from the references and test them with the, you can test them with your, whatever we call this Kotlin Koans. Similarly, we have the IDE available also. Just to get you back to the IDE, let's just go to the IntelliJ IDEA platform, wherein you can quickly start with the learner's profile. Okay. Now you guys have started IntelliJ IDEA. So let's get started with the Learn project. So here what you can do is you can quickly click on Learn and you can click on Browse Courses. So when you click on Browse Courses, you're going to get a Kotlin course which you can open with IntelliJ IDEA under Kotlin Koans, IntelliJ IDEA. You can quickly click on Join the course. Once you guys join the course, you're going to get the Kotlin Koans open in IntelliJ IDEA also, and you can pass on your test cases. So let the number of lessons load up. There are 7 lessons with 43 exercises here. So now all the files will be generated. We have got Kotlin Koans open. Now here, under the Kotlin Koans course, all these topics which we have seen under Kotlin course here, So you can see that we have got these 43 topics. So all the similar test cases will be available to you within Kotlin Koans also. Now here again, it's the first function, the simple function, wherein you guys are going to write your code. So just to write the code, we can quickly start with yes, you can quickly say, I want to edit this file. Okay, let's click on this so that the file gets updated now. And we are going to define the code OK. Somehow this is acting a little slow. So let's wait in for a moment. So it's trying to load the programs, maybe. We'll hold on for a minute. So let me just exit that once and I'll load that again. Let's run as administrator. Run the program. Load your IntelliJ IDEA platform. You will be loaded into Kotlin Koans project. Now here, we're going to define our code and we'll quickly click on check. So once we click on check, our compiler is going to compile the code and all the test cases will be checked. Once we have got the test cases passed, we are going to get the responses. So let's wait for a moment as the indexing is going on at the moment. Once the indexing completes, we can quickly click on check. So now we have checked the code and we have got that analysis completed and no problems found in this course. Maybe our first function, simple functions will be tested fine. For the explanation part, I have already explained you the details about how we write a return function in this way in the Kotlin Koans online player. Similarly, we can go to the next one. So let's say the next one is the named arguments, wherein you have your task.kt, wherein you have these named arguments for prefix and postfix, which you guys need to implement in. So let's just define the code. Here we are going to use the prefix. The prefix will be a single bracket separated by comma, and we are going to write the postfix, and we are going to define the next value, and here we are done. So now once we have done that, this is correct. Now we can quickly go back to the next. Okay, we get back to this and we have to go and click on check actually. So we are here. Let's quickly click on check. So, okay, the second one is also correct. We'll go to the next one, the third one, which is the default arguments, which you guys have already observed, wherein you need to update the foo function here. So we can quickly create function fwo, wherein you can create a name with the string type. Then you can create a number with an integer type with a default value of 42, followed by you can create a 2 uppercase Boolean variable with a value of false type. Now, once you have defined this code, you need to have an equal to at the end. Have an equal to define the code. Now the syntax is correct. You can quickly click on check and you're going to get the response. So now this option is also correct. So this is how you can quickly check back your Kotlin Koans on an online editor as well as on an offline IntelliJ IDEA editor. Now there are other options like triple quoted strings, nullable types, lambdas, which we are going to cover up in further classes when you are done with classes, conventions, collections, and so on. So that was about Kotlin Koans, which we have implemented today. Now let's get back to the next topic in queue. So the next topic in queue is your Kotlin loops and functions, which we are going to observe. Okay. So in order to quickly go to Kotlin loops, before that, let me just quickly share the resources with all of you on the Trello board. Just give me a moment. Let us just mark lesson 3 resources. So here we have the Kotlin Koans. You can start Kotlin Koans here, and you can quickly start online exercises here. Okay. So these will be the resources which you all can quickly observe. Followed by this, now we are going to continue to the loops in Kotlin. So a Kotlin provides its own way of looping on ranges, inspired by the Kotlin under the hood, understand the internals Google Input Output 2019 video, which is a really good video, by the way, and the author has recommended it. And author wanted you to have a look into that, but some of the topmost approaches have been discussed within this article, which we are going to observe. But before that, I would like to share the video which you all should go through. So this is a video from Google I/O 2019, wherein all the discussions about Kotlin have been discussed by developers of Kotlin themselves. So I would like to quickly share this video for all of you so as to have a quick reference. Let me just quickly share you video reference for Kotlin internals, which is a must read for all the participants, those who are learning Kotlin with us. Now we'll quickly get started with loops in Kotlin. So when we say we have to implement loops in Kotlin, the for loop is used to iterate through a diversity of types to loop over, such as collections, ranges, and maps. Any class which provides an iterator can be looped over. As such, the syntax for loop in Kotlin is for element in collection, and you can define the number of elements. Okay. So now what could be a collection? What kind of collection elements we can take up? We are going to understand that part in collections also. But as of now, you can understand a collection is a set of elements. You can read each element from the collection and you can store each element into an in, and then you can perform operations using that element. Moreover, this is one way of calling a Kotlin for loop. Another way is to call using a range. So what you can do is, in Kotlin, it's possible to use a for loop on a range. This is arguably the simplest way of doing a loop, wherein you can quickly write for I in up to a range of values, where both the ranges, the starting range and the ending range, is inclusive within the loop. So this is the start range, this is the stop range, and each element between 0 to 100 will one by one go into I, and then you can perform an operation on it. When using ranges, it's also possible to use the step option. So every loop increments with the value as indicated by the step. So what you can do is, within range, you can define a range from starting position to the ending number. And you can also use an incrementation operator by calling the step keyword. So you can define step. Now in this case, what will happen? First 0 will be printed, then 0 plus 5, 5 will be printed, then 5 plus 5, 10 will be printed, 10 plus 5, 15 will be printed, 15 plus 5, 20 will be printed, and so on. Now Kotlin can also be implemented using until statement. So what you can do is, another way of loop is to use the until function. In this way, you can loop over a range which does not include its last element. Okay. So if you say 0 until 100, then actual values from 0 to 99 will be operated, or you can process the values between 0 to 99, and the last value 100 will be exclusive of the range. So this is what can be done. Similarly, you can also implement Kotlin loops using repeat. So it provides a built-in repeat function which takes a lambda function to iterate over a number of values or to a range. So let's say you can quickly call a repeat function and you can give 100 values. So it will start from 0 and it will go up to 99. So you can quickly repeat the value for 100 times. Okay. Similarly, Kotlin loop using a for each can also be implemented. While the Kotlin for each on a range looks pretty similar to the other options under the hood, works a little bit different, which can be seen in the linked video at the 25-minute mark. In a nutshell, the Kotlin compiler creates an iterable object, an integer range object, and then the iteration will take place. This shouldn't matter much in terms of performance, but it's something to be aware of the performance critical code. So you guys can quickly go to this range, and for each element in this range, you can quickly implement it this way. Okay, so what we can do is we can specify a range from 0 to 100, and for each element from 0 to 100, we can iterate over the elements. Okay, so these are some of the important for loop elements which are implemented, and we really recommend you to undergo this video of Google Input Output 2019, which will definitely bring in a lot of information to you. Okay, now let's see. So I've already shared the video, and I have brought in certain important resources for you to implement loops in Kotlin programming. Loops in Kotlin programming is a quick introduction, syntax introduction to loops in Kotlin programming. And followed by this, I'm going to share some detailed descriptions. Okay. So now here, let's say you have some range functions, and here is your first beginner level implementation of beginner level loops in Kotlin. So you guys can quickly have a good article on medium.com by Pandu Baraja, who has written this nice article, which we can quickly have a reference to all the beginners for writing Kotlin programs. So what we can do is, let's keep it on one end and let's start implementing the Kotlin code at the right hand side. So here I'm going to put in an article on the left hand side. Similarly, I'm going to put my Kotlin playground active on one end of the screen, and then let the program goes on. So let's go to play.kotlinlang.org. So we have started the Kotlin playground, and we are going to write the functions. So the first function, the first loop which you guys are going to implement will be a range to loop. Okay. In range to, what you can do is you can define in a range. So now let's say we are going to write a main function, and here within this, implement a range loop. Okay, you're going to implement a range loop. So for this, what you can quickly do is you can define a for keyword, you can define your conditions, you can define an input variable I. In is a keyword which will help you iterate over each element within the range. So let's say we have a range starting from 0 to 3 in this case, wherein 0 is the first element of the range and 3 is the last element in the range, and both the elements are inclusive, which means 0 will also be printed and 3 will also be printed. Now within this for loop, then what you can do is you can define a scope for your for loop, and you can perform the print statement. So let's say I'm going to execute a println. So let's say we're going to define number and followed by $i. Okay, and so as to have a reference to the variable, you can also print in like this, or you can directly access $i as per your convenience. So we have got an I, and we are going to perform a run on this. So let's quickly run this code. Now, once we run this code, you can see that we have got a number 0 printed, followed by number 1, number 2, and number 3. So both the numbers 0, 0, and number 3, both are inclusive in the range. Now, similarly, this range could be anything. Let's say you want to run a value up to 255. Okay. So what you can do is you can quickly run this cell. And once you run this cell, you can see that you have got the value 0 printed up till the value of 255, in which both the values are inclusive in the range. Moreover, let's say I want to print value from 0 to 255, but I would like to step the value by 10 so that I get 0, then I get 10, then 20, then 30, then 40, 50, and so on up till 250. So that's what we're going to run. So once we run, we have got the output as 0, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, up till 250. So step is a keyword which can help you increment the for loop in Kotlin program. So I hope this is clear to all of you, and you can have a sample implementation of for loop in Java here. So the range 2 forms as double dot operator, and it will do the increment including the upper limit. So you have the lower limit, you have the upper limit, and both will be included in the program. Similarly, how we change the increment value in the loop with plus and the negative operator, you can quickly have that with the step, and you can also have the negative numbers for the step also. Suppose we want to print a value from, let's say that's a test. Let's say I want to print it from 100 to 0 with a step of -1. Okay, let's say. So when I run this, so you can see that this function like Python cannot be implemented here. Okay, so you cannot have a reverse range as of now here in Kotlin programming, but what you do have is a positive range to test. Okay, let's say, so I hope this is clear. So you can start with 0 to 10, and let's say if you perform an incrementation negative operator, again that cannot be done. You can only take the positive operators. Let's say if I say I'll print it with 3 steps. So when I print it with 3 steps, I'm going to get 0, 3, 6, 9, and so on. So you have got the step operators as well. Secondly, we have got an until operator, okay, in the loops. So what until can do, you can start from a range and you can execute until the value, but this until limit, upper limit, is exclusive in the code. That is not inclusive. Okay. So what I'll do is, let me just quickly copy the link to this code and let me share with all the participants on Mentor. Let's copy that. I'm going to share that here. So here is the for loop script code. Okay. Now, okay, what I'll do is, let me just call all these functions over here. I'm going to define different functions. Function for loop demo. And I'm going to call these values implement the range for loop, and I'm going to call for loop demo for your reference, and let's print that. Okay, so we've got that for loop demo has been done. Similarly, now we are going to write another function, and I've already shared the script code. Now, so again, we are referring to the Medium article, and we are going to refer the until function. So we are going to have an until for until demo. Now within this for until demo, what you can do is you can have a for loop. You can have a variable I which starts from a range 0 and it prints up to, let's say, 10 until 10, and you can perform the print. So we are going to call print line, and we are going to call the values to be printed, let's say number, and this time the number will be again $i. So I'm going to define a value for until demo, and let me just quickly call this demo for until demo. Okay, so here's the function which we are going to run. Let's quickly run that. So once we run that, you can see you have got the values printed from 0 to 9. But in this case, since the above range was 10, the upper limit was 10, but the final printed output highest value is 9. So this means this 10 is exclusive from the loop. So when you use the until keyword, the upper limit is not included in the range. Okay. So this is how you can quickly implement this value. Then in order to have the negative loops, what you can do is you can have the down to. So in some cases, we may need a loop that does in reverse order. To do that, you can use down to, and you can combine it with a step as well. Okay. So now in order to do that, let's print that function quickly. Function for reverse loop. Okay. So we can have a reverse loop here. So for the reverse loop, what we can do is we can have a for I in, we can quickly have a range. Let's say I want to go from 10 and I want to implement down to a specific value, and this down to value should be like, let's say 0. Okay. And finally, we are going to print the values of I. So I'm going to print number and I'm going to print the value of I. So once I print this now, and let me just call this demo. Let's call it as for reverse demo, for reverse loop. We are going to run this now. So once we run this for reverse loop now, you can see that we have got, okay, so I have called print. I should call print ln here so that the numbers should be printed on new line. So when I call new line now, you can see that you have got a reverse loop from number 10 to 0. Okay. So here both the limits are inclusive, the upper limit as well as the lower limit. Moreover, you can also go back with a step. Let's say if you want to increment -3. Okay. If you want to decrement by 3, sorry. If you want to decrement by 3, then you can use step and define 3. And then if you want to run, you can quickly run that. So you're going to get number 10, -3, 7, -3, 4, -3, 1, and so on. So this is your down to function, which can be used. Finally, you can have collections just to make sure what collections looks like. So collection could be a list of strings, or it could be list of numbers. It could be list of any elements which we can create. And we can also implement loop using these lists also. Okay, these collections also. So collection is something, a list of items. These could be a list of strings, it could be list of numbers, it could be list of heterogeneous values. Anyways, you can create these lists. Okay. So now what we are going to have is, let's get started with a collections demo. Okay. So here, what am I going to do? I'm going to create a new function. I'm going to call it as collections demo. Under this collections demo, what am I going to do? I'm going to create a collection. Okay. So create a list of actors, let's say. Okay, I want to make a list of actors. So you can quickly create a keyword list of. List of keyword can be used to create a list of elements. And let's say I would like to pass some strings. Let's say I would like to call Salman Khan. I would like to call Amir Khan. I would like to call Ranveer Singh, something like this. So I've got 3 actors added onto a list, and I'm going to save that into a variable. So you can use value, or else you can use variable. Both ways you can do. And I'm going to call them as actors. Okay. So I've got a list of actors here, a variable actors with a list of elements. Now it is saying the list of unexpected tokens used to separate expressions on the same line. Okay. Used to separate expressions on the same line. But since we don't have separate elements, it's fine. I think there is no issue of that. Okay, we have got a variable. Let's just store that into value. Okay, So here, when you make a list, then you are going to store that into a value. So when you create a list of actors, okay, let's say now I want to print every actor from this list. So what I can do is I can define a for loop with collections. Okay, so you can define a for loop and you can take actor in actors. This means the actors has, as you all can see, the actors have 3 lists. So what we can do is we can fetch each actor out of this list and we can quickly put it into the actor variable and then you can perform operations on it. Okay. So now let's say what you can do is you can print line and you can print the actors. Okay. So you can quickly define $actor and the values can be printed. Okay. I hope this is clear to all of you. So what you can do is you can make a collection of strings and then you can iterate over each element in the list and you can perform some operation on that. So now if I run this cell, if I quickly run this cell, so we need to call this collections demo in the main functions also. Let's call it as collections demo. Collections demo, and let's call the code. So once we execute this collections demo on code, now you have got Salman, Amir and Ranveer, all the 3 actors printed out of the loop. So now you can see that this is how collections can be implemented. Okay guys, so you guys have implemented up till the collections. So now you all can see, you can quickly create a list of elements. Similarly, you can quickly create an array of elements also. And you can implement similar, this was done in Java earlier, but we have got an easy way of implementing collections and implementing a for loop over the collections, and we've got that demonstration out. Similarly, you can implement a for each loop on this. So you can also use for each keyword and you can get each element out of it. Okay. So what you can do is, let's say in case if we want to implement a function for each loop, let's go for a for each demo. And within this for each demo, what you guys are going to do, let's just call this function for each demo. And within this function, what we are going to do, let's say again, we are going to create a list of actress, let's say. And within this list of actress, I'm going to call a list. I'm going to call Katrina, let's say. I'm going to call Karina. I've got these 2 actresses into the list. Now I want to implement a for each loop. So I'll take actress. I'm going to implement for each over it. And now within this for each, I'm going to create a keyword and I'm going to create an object of these actresses. So let's say I'm going to call actress. Okay. Let's say ACT variable, let's say actress variable. I've created an actress variable, and this actress variable is going to receive the value of each actress within the list. And finally, we're going to perform the println statement. So you're going to call the println. You can call the println function and you can define the actress variable just to get that printed. Okay. So this is how you can quickly print that. Let's go for each demo. Let's run it. So once you run this for each demo, now you can see that with for each, all these actresses which we have created under the actress list, every actress is going to be fetched out and will be stored into an actress variable using the for each loop. And then we are going to print these variables. So this is how Kotlin programming works, wherein you can quickly deal with collections and you can implement a for each loop over it. Similarly, so there are various other options. One of the best part is using the indices also, as well as you can also use with index to get each index value out of it, of the from the collection. So this way also we can implement that. So you can see, you can take a list, you can call the indices, and you can get the index of every element which is printed out. Then one of the nicest option is repeat. If you just want to repeat something, you can use a repeat function and you can get that printed. Let's say repeat demo. Let's call a repeat demo here. I'm going to call a function repeat demo. And within this repeat demo, let's say you're doing something. Let's say you want to print a statement and you want to print it 5 times. Okay. So what we can do is we can repeat the code. Repeat, I want to print something for 5 times. I want to print the name of Kareena Kapoor 5 times. Okay. So let's say I'll do Kareena and I want to print that for 5 times. So I'll simply do that repeat and I'll run over it. And let me just call the repeat demo in the main function. Repeat demo. Now, once you call this repeat demo, REPEAT repeat demo, when we run it, now you can see that Kareena has been printed for 5 times. So similarly, if you just want to repeat anything in the code, you can quickly run repeat function. So now, as you all can see, we have done various loops. Then you have while and do while loops. There is no difference with while and do while loop in Java. It works as usual. So what you can do is you can have a while statement. While a condition is true, you're going to perform some implementations on it. So this is simply we can do. And you can quickly perform some objectives if the condition is not true. So both ways we can do. So let's go for a while demo also. So we're going to create a new code for while demo. And let's create a function. I'm going to perform a while demo here. Now to perform this while demo, we are going to take a condition. Let's say I'm going to consider condition with a while statement. I'll say y is greater equal to 10. In case if I is greater equal to 10, we're going to perform some print functions. Let's say I'm going to print number till the time I is greater equal to 10. We are going to do something. So you need to define this variable. Let's say I'm going to define this variable I, and I'm going to call it as, let's say 20. Okay, you're going to define 20. Then you're going to print the number and you're going to define the value of I, and then you can quickly perform a decrement operator. So you can go for I minus minus, which is the default decrementation operator, to decrement it by 1, or else you can also define it as I is equal to I minus 1. So you can decrement the value by your specific step. Okay. So now let's run this. So now you can see that we have got the while printed. We've got number 20, 19, 18, 17, 16, and so on up till the number 10. Okay. So this is how you can quickly implement the while demo in Kotlin programming. So that's all for the while demo with respect to this article. So I would really recommend you all to go through with the article, and I'm just sharing a code to all the participants. Complete source code for loops. Okay, so we have got the loops done. Now, with respect to loops, I would like to share one very important resource. So here is a tutorial on tutorialcard.com for Kotlins, wherein you can see that all the loop variables like do, while, repeat, ranges, when, these are available over here. So you can quickly have a discussion on Kotlin loops with lists and with different examples for range, which we have generally done. So this is the with index operator. What you can do is you can use your list. You can apply with index over it, and when you use with index, you can get the value as well as you can get the index of that element also. Okay. So similarly, you can get the output 0, 1, 2, 3, and the specific element on that index will be printed. Then we have already done a demo on for each loop. So this is done. Now we are going to have an example on Kotlin when. Now here, when you see here on Kotlin when, now, so similarly, you guys can have the when expressions also. So what you can do is when some expression is true, you can quickly take the value of that expression and you can quickly execute some certain number of statements. This you can do with strings generally, where you can, if you want to check whether an attribute is of string type or an attribute is of integer type. So if you want to perform a value, then you can execute multiple statements in that way. So here are certain examples which you guys can go through and you can complete this part. So we are done with this. Now we are going to perform the type checking example. So here you are going to have a very nice article with the when expression and the type checking article. So you can use an is keyword to quickly check the type of an element, okay? As well as you can implement the when example here. So now what we have is, let's say we have a list of elements wherein we have added some name, age, salary, and employee ID to a list. And then we have checked the attribute of each element added onto the list. And if the attribute is of some type, like a string type, an integer type, or a double type, we are going to print in some statements. Else, we are going to print it something like it's not an attribute. So we are going to have a simple example on type checking, as well as we are going to have an example on the when conditions, okay, when the attribute is true. So let's quickly get back to the code here. And we are going to start a code here. Let's call it as a type checking with when demo. We're going to call it as type check demo. Now we're going to write a function. Let's call it as type check demo. And within this function type check demo, typechek demo. Okay. Let's see what it says. Unresolved reference type check. Let's call it as m type check demo. Okay. Now here, so within this code m type check demo, what we are going to do, let's say we are going to take certain variables. Let's say if you want to, or you can directly take in a list of some elements. Let's say I'm going to list of elements. Let's say I've taken a name Devanshu. Let's say I am 29 years old and this is my height. Let's say 5'9". So I've got three values folded onto this. Okay. So I've got a double, I've got an integer, I've got a string, and let's say I'm a mentor of this program. So let's say I would like to define true. So I've defined 4 values, and I'm going to add it into a list of elements. Let's say I'm going to call them as elements. So I'm going to add these 4 elements into a list of elements. Now what we are going to do, we're going to perform a when condition. Okay. Now when we are going to call it as an attribute, let's say. Okay. So or else what you can also call it as an element. Each element we are going to read from a list. Okay. So generally we have an operator known as attribute, which can quickly get the property. Attribute is the default keyword, or else you can use any other, is a general keyword which is taken, or else you can take any keyword as per your like. So since we have multiple elements in the list of elements, so I'm going to call it as element. Now I'm going to check if the element is of type string, let's say. Okay. If it is of type string, then what we are going to do? So if the element is of, let's say, sorry, we are going to do, let's say, is string. I'm going to check if the element is a string, then I'm going to perform some code. I'm going to say, let's print element, and I'm going to say name is $element. Okay. So this statement is going to run. So whatever element has been taken out of the list is going to be printed. Okay. So I think that's clear to you, and or else you can define the brackets this way as well, so as to have it. Okay. Now, similarly, we are going to have the next code. I'm sorry, I've got elements. Let's call it an element. Okay. Now here you say unresolved reference element, unresolved reference elements. You can define the variable with the for loop initially. So we can create a quick for loop here. Now here within this for loop, we are going to say element in your elements. So we are going to read each element out of the list, and then we are going to check when the element is of string type, we can do something. If it is of integer type, then we can do something like we are going to print ln function. We are going to check what type of element is here. We can say age is the element. Similarly, you can quickly check if it is of double type, then we are going to print the line and we'll say height is the element. Height is $element. And similarly, if it is of Boolean type, then we are going to print the code somewhat like this. Let's say a mentor. Yes, I'm a mentor. Let's say kind of this. So we have got a type check demo here, and we have called the type check demo at the top as well. So let's quickly run this statement. So when we run this statement, now you can see, yes, my name is Devanshu, age is 29, height is 5.9, and yes, I'm a mentor. All the 4 statements have been printed, and the default values have also been taken. Okay, so now to quickly observe that, now let's see, we have got a list of elements which we have stored it into elements. Okay, you have a list of elements which you have stored into elements. Now what you have done, you have extracted each element using the for statement in this keyword element. Then you have selected that element using a when element and you matched it. If that element is string, we're going to print the, since Devanshu is a string, this element will be the first element, will come into this loop. Now we are going to take the attribute of that element, then we are going to match that element with all the 4, if it is a string or if it is an integer or if it is a double or if it is a Boolean. So whichever condition is true, we can quickly print that statement. Okay, so this is like if else if statement, which you can quickly print using when statement. So all the 4 conditions will be checked and on each case, and whichever is true, we are going to get that printed. So I hope this is clear, that you all can implement the for each, the for loop along with when statements, along with you can check the type of the element. Okay. So type checking can be easily done in Kotlin programming. Now, once you guys are done with the type check, so I believe all these topics which we have planned for the day have been covered. So just to quickly show you, when statements, loop creations, ranges, type checking, Kotlin loops and functions, Koans have been done. We've also explored about collections, wherein we have explored about a list of elements. You understand Kotlin functions which we have executed, function creation you all understand. Now, in the upcoming sessions, we are going to perform Lambda, inline exceptions, and so on. We have done exercises on loops and functions also. So let me just put it up. So now, as of now, you can see that we understand a lot of basics of Kotlin, which is required for Android programming further. So kindly go through with all these examples which we have taken. Kindly go through with the Kotlin Koans for the collectives. Try to understand what all things you are able to do, what all things you are not able to do. Post your queries with your mentors on Trello so that they can help you out with the specific queries. And for the solutions, we have already made a list of solutions for Kotlin Koans on Git. We have maintained it here. So I'm sharing the link to all the resolutions which are available for Kotlin Koans. So let me just quickly share that with all of you. Here we have the solutions to Kotlin Koans problems. So now I would like all the participants to go through with the references, understand the concepts, try to take the exercises on Kotlin Koans. If you face any problems, we already have a list of solutions here on Kotlin Koans. You can refer to the solutions and you can work out on the problems and you can get your 100% progress on Kotlin Koans. So that's all for the day. Thank you so much for being available. We can have our next class and we'll be posting it live online. Thank you so much, everyone, for watching.